So we do have the recording for people that can't make it, and this will go onto the YouTube channel for people that aren't able to make it live, which means you can follow along. There's a couple of packs which will be sold to people that can drink along to this if they want to. But everybody that's on tonight, thank you very much for making it live. And hopefully, this is going to be something a little bit different. It's a really, really interesting distillery. This it's very Danish. It's that kind of like really cool, kind of like that Scandinavian style of like cool and interesting and doing things slightly different and breaking rules and but also doing things kind of like traditionally, but also breaking loads of rules as well. So hopefully you'll find this a little bit different to a sort of a bog standard whiskey tasting, because they're doing some absolutely fascinating things with particularly cask maturation. So um, what I will do is, if you want to start on the first one, which is essentially the baseline for the rest of the lineup that we've got, which is now this is called floor malted rye. But as we will go into, this isn't 100% rye. This is not just a pure rye whiskey. So this is on the label floor malted rye whiskey, and you might see on the picture rye is in very big letters. And this is bottled at 48% as well, so a little higher than you might expect. So if you want to be drinking this while I give you the background information about the distillery itself, and then I will move into the particular whiskey, and then I'll get some feedback, because if you want to save a little bit of this, if you've got another glass, or a number of glasses that you can kind of pour the other ones into, and kind of maybe leave some of this to then go back to, because for the next four, particularly the next four, this is the base that they then use for doing these particular cast finishes that will then take it in quite different directions. So we'll do the kind of feedback after this, but let me give you some background information about the distillery itself. So relatively new. So this is the first distillery in Denmark. Founded in 2005, and this kind of region up here is called Jutland. Now, Stauning is a small village in which it is based. There is also a politician well known in Danish history called Thorvald Stauning, who has nothing to do with the village itself. He just simply shares the surname, but we will actually touch onto him when we get to the very last one. It's based in the village, and it was set up by these 9 friends who, very similar to Matt Mira. If you've had any Matt Mira tastings or any dealings with those guys, it was a number of friends who would get together who were kind of getting bottles of whiskey, very much into drinking whiskey, and it was always Scotch. And they were like, "Well, hang on, why is there no Danish whiskey? So actually, let's set this up." So we have, and it's not in the order of the picture, but of those 9 friends, we have a doctor, a teacher, a helicopter pilot, 5 engineers, and a butcher. And the butcher, who is that one there, so second in from the left. They actually he was able to procure an unused abattoir, which is where they first started distilling. So they sourced their still and mash tun from Spain, and they used the abattoir and some of the leftover equipment that was still there in order to start making their whiskey. So the malting was done on the floor of the cold room, where they would basically age their meats. They essentially bastardized an old meat mincer that was used for them milling the barley. The barley has always, since day one, been sourced from within about 20 kilometres, if not slightly less. So they are using barley and rye, and it is with farms, very, very local farms, and that is from day one. They did their first distillation on August 2006. Now, around that time, Jim Murray, who is a well-known but nowadays kind of infamous whiskey writer stroke reviewer, was in the area, and at a whiskey fair in Sweden managed to come across some of their new make. And he was incredibly impressed with what they were doing. Now, they at the time were trying to make a heavily peated whiskey along the lines of Islay whiskies. They were trying to emulate Scotch. Now, Jim Murray likened their new make to the equivalent of an Ardbeg from the 1970s. And as you can imagine, that's a really, really good comparison. So that encouraged them to go from the abattoir to what would eventually be converted into a small kind of farm building. So this was just the following year, 2007. It was only a kilometre and a half away. And as they grew the business and as the reputation of the whiskey ended up getting really highly regarded, in 2017 to then launch in 2018, literally next door, they had an architect design a very modern distillery, which is literally next door. So that building is right next door to what is now the distillery. Now, unlike nearly every single distillery on earth that has one wash still, two spirit stills, maybe four stills, maybe six, that sort of thing, big stills. These guys are doing things quite differently because in the abattoir they had a very small space. They used a very small still, and as they expanded, instead of expanding the size of the still that they were using, they kept the still the same size and just expanded the number of the stills that they used. So at the moment, they call them pod stills. And these are 24 stills of about 2,000 litres. They're all direct fired by gas. Now, a lot of distilleries nowadays use indirect firing because you get much more control over the heat and you've got much more control over the distillation process. Again, because that's what they started with, that's what they have carried on doing. So they have maintained this process that they had from day one in such a small scale. And as they've expanded, they haven't gotten bigger in terms of the size of everything or kind of cut costs or made things more efficient. They've tried to keep things as exactly the same as they were doing from day one. Now, you've got engineers that are involved in the team, and what it means is that they've been able to be very experimental. From early days, they were adapting a meat mincer to do the milling. So what they have for their germination and their essentially the steeping, whereas you would have the guys that would kind of turn it over with a malt shovel. So you lay your barley out on the barley and grain out on the floor, you steep it in water, and then as it begins to germinate, you need to turn it over so it's maintaining an equal temperature and an equal kind of level of water in there, and it's not getting too hot underneath. They've created this machine that runs up and down. So that is a picture of it, which doesn't really do it justice. I have pulled off, and I'm really, it's not going to work, are you? You absolute swine. Wait a minute. There we go. So this is from Stauning's YouTube channel. So this is the machine in action, and it runs up and down these two channels, and the arms, as they turn around, they continually kind of keep it moving to make sure that over time it maintains this kind of even temperature. It's not resting, it's not sitting, it's not rotting underneath, it's not getting too hot. They claim it's the very first machine that's ever done this. Now, I'm not aware of any other distilleries that are doing this particular machinery, but it's an absolutely amazing piece of equipment. And that was something that they literally invented. So with the floor malted rye, which is their core bottling, we have now it does change batch to batch, but we are looking at 60% rye and 40% barley. So this is not 100% rye, even though rye kind of screams out on the bottle. We do have that element of barley as well. Matured for, it's about 3 to 4 years, so it's still relatively young, which is surprising considering the climate. You'd think that there would be that with the climate that they've got being relatively cool, that they've got the capability to age for quite a long time, but they deliberately go quite young. Everything on here is 4, 5, at most 6 years, because they believe that they're doing a lot more in terms of the fermentation, the cask maturation, that's bringing all this flavour out, and actually leaving it in cask will almost kind of dilute the flavour profile that's in there. And also bottled at 48%, so a little bit stronger. Now I'm just going to highlight my screen. Because I also need to share screen as well. So when they first launched, that's what the original bottling looked like, which was okay, but not the most exciting thing in the world. This is what the packaging looks like now. This one on the right here of the three is what the rye would look like. What they have done in the last 6 months is they've called it we make the whiskey, you design the bottle. So they now have this set of packaging which is available of their core rye, of which has nothing at all apart from that bit on the bottom. But what you do get in the box is a sheet with a load of stickers that you can put all over it if you so wish, and also one of those gold pens as well, so you can draw your own label on it if you want. And I think it's the Chaos. Yeah, it's all a bit fake now. But when I first got the bottle that had the gold pen in as a sampling bottle, my kids got hold of it. So my bottle of Chaos, that was a sample bottle, I've got flowers and hearts and love you, daddy, and all sorts of stuff on it. But that's my unique bottle. So that's exactly why they've done it. So, as I say, this is the core whiskey that will be used as the base for the next four. So I will be very interested to see what everybody thinks of this, because if you're not a fan of this, the rest of the evening might be a little bit tricky. But if you do, then we're off to a good start, because this is then where it goes into different directions. So what do we think of this? I've got nods.
Yeah, it's good.
That'll do. Anybody else? Jamie's not going to be shy this time because he spoke at the last one, so.
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, really good, mate. Yeah. Get kind of spearmint coming through on the nose for me.
Mm-hmm.
If you get that, kind of a bit of a mintiness to it. But yeah, it's a really nice rye. I know it's not 100% rye, but it's got that kind of rye bread sort of characteristic to it as well. Really, really good.
Mint, I've got like citrus coming through. There's a bit of a chocolatiness, but it's not a spicy rye. So we've got on the back. In terms of the back label, I'm looking at it now. Some say it tastes like liquid rye bread. We think they're right, with notes of vanilla, citrus, and mint too. So bang on, mate. I think this is great. I'm finding myself going towards rye whiskies anyway, but I love the textures and all sorts of things that are going on with this particular one. Anybody struggling with this a little bit? Or is it generally seem to be okay? No, good. Right, thank God for that. Excellent. Right.
I think it's not a sort of hit you over the head kind of rye.
Yes.
And I don't know whether that's because it's, as you're saying, it's a mix of barley and rye in the mash. But it's got some fruitiness in it. So I can see why it'll be interesting seeing the others with the cask finishes, because I think some of the really, really powerful ryes, you're not sure quite what the cask could do to it. But this one actually is sort of nicely balanced.
Yeah, it's sometimes for quite a long time I thought I didn't like rye, because every rye whiskey I had, particularly American rye, was that like big chili spice and really spicy, like Booker's and all this. Like, was like rye heavy, and I was like, oh, it tastes like dill and everything like this. And as I got into rye, I became to realize that rye can go in a lot of different directions. You can get like bread and butter pudding, you can get sourdough, you can get brown bread, you can get toast and chocolate and all sorts of things going on. And I still struggle with that big spicy note, which can then, if you start putting, say, finishes with it, sometimes it's just too intense. Whereas I like the fruitiness that's it. And as you say, that's probably a factor of that barley element just reining everything in a little bit and just kind of pulling it back to be able to give you everything else that's going on in that flavor profile. So I'm going to try not to make this particularly quick, but it's always the danger when you're doing a sort of a single distillery tasting is that it's like, right, here's the next one and here's the next one, and it tends to go a little bit quicker because I don't have to give those background information. So I've tried to pull out some stuff in terms of everything else that's involved with the finishes of these particular ones. But like I say, if you want to keep a little bit of this first one back to potentially go back to and almost do that comparison to go, oh, actually, I can see what this finish is doing. So the next we have is the Duro Dreams. So this is actually their latest release. So this came out in October, and this is essentially the standard rye. So it's pretty heavily charred virgin American oak barrels. Now on this one, it's about 2 years. So we're looking at younger initial maturation. And then we have an 18 months finish in, so there's a total of 19 casks that we used. They are a combination of ruby port and tawny port. Now, I've not managed to find out what the split is. So obviously not 50-50 with there being 19 casks. They have said explicitly it is 19 casks that we used. But I don't know the split of the ruby and the tawny. They're all from the Douro Valley, which is in Portugal, very well-known region of Portugal, known for their port wines. And just thinking, because I wasn't 100% certain until I was kind of putting all the notes together, exactly what the difference was between tawny port and ruby port. I always thought the tawny port kind of just wasn't aged as long as ruby, but actually they are quite distinctly different. Tawny port is aged in barrel before it's bottled. So that's why it tends to be a slightly lighter colour, because the wine itself is kind of losing a bit of colour in the barrel, and you get a little bit more of that nuttiness, and it tends to be a little bit more lighter in flavour. Ruby port is an aging in bottle. Now, they do have some cask aging, but it's not the amount of time that it does as in tawny. So in terms of aging, as a rough rule of thumb, tawny port, aged in barrel, it goes in the bottle, so you tend not to get much aging, if any, and you won't get any sediment in a tawny port, but it will be lighter in colour and generally tends to be light in flavour, whereas ruby port might be a little bit of time in barrel, but then the majority of the aging, as with a wine, will be in the bottle itself. So it tends to be heavier, you've got deeper flavours. So as that picture shows, plum jam, blackberry, licorice, chocolate, whereas tawny port is more like fig, praline, there's a nuttiness. Beef jerky doesn't sound particularly attractive in a port, but let's go with that. So with this particular one, with the Stauning, we have that 18 months, which is a considerable finish of the ruby and the tawny port, on top of that kind of sourdough, slightly chocolatey rye element. So what do we think of that one? Emma's nodding. I think she likes it. Yeah. Oh, we've got quite a few thumbs up already. The port is very obvious on this for me. It very much is, and actually, it feels more tawny than ruby as well. There's a lovely kind of like sweet nut, praline, red fruit. This is really, really nice. I'm really enjoying this. Can't see any shaking heads, but is there anyone? There's more nodding heads than everything else. Let's see. Have we got any comments from the room?
I think if I had to put my neck out, I'd say there's probably more tawny port in that than there is ruby.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I'd definitely say it's got more of that nutty note coming through. It's almost like the majority is tawny, and then there's a few ruby in there just to kind of give a bit of depth on the finish, almost more than anything else. But it's nice that the port properly comes through. Doesn't dominate the rye. You still get that sourdough note coming through, but it's not too sweet. It's not too tannic. It's very, very nicely balanced.
one.
I think Emma's necked hers. Is Dimitri getting any of that one?
Yes. Dish. You necked the last one. That's why I'm getting in there.
Okay, right.
Yeah, this one is lovely. Really nice.
Dimitri's got like literally the dregs on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the one that we don't have on here that probably would, if I could fit a seventh one in, would be either before or after this, is they've done one in sweet wine cask as well. So that is a finish in a dessert wine that's the equivalent of a Sauterne. It's I think it's a Swedish dessert wine that they've done, which has got a little bit more of that sugary note to it. I probably prefer this, which is why I put this one on. The sweet wine one is, if you're liking this, but you think, oh, do you know what? It'd be really nice if it was a little bit sweeter. That's definitely the one to go for. But kind of like the nutty notes of this one coming through as well. But seems to have gone down really well. So this could be quite interesting to see how we go on to the rest. Now, the next one, I didn't put it on the pack or anything like that, but the one of the sales managers who's involved with Stauning, the El Clasico, he has this in his freezer at home, and he basically uses this as a pre-mixed cocktail at 45.7%, because that's what you do when you're sales managers. So the next one we go on to is the El Clasico. And this is a finish in sweet vermouth casks. So again, the Stauning Rye that we had to start with, again for about 2 years, and then we have that 18-month finish in barrels that previously held sweet vermouth. So vermouth is a fortified wine that is then technical term aromatized with a range of botanicals, and essentially you can either kind of add flavorings, or, as is the case particularly with sweet vermouth, is you put them into a barrel that has a load of dry ingredients that infuses into the wine. You also add a base alcohol, which could be, the equivalent of, say, a vodka or some kind of sugarcane spirit, which is very commonly used because it's a base spirit that's very cheap to make that gives you that alcohol content. But that's what increases the alcohol content, a bit like with port. They would add a base spirit. And then it's these botanicals. Now, vermouth, the word vermouth, comes from Germany. So wormwood was this dates back to the 16th century, where it was a shopkeeper who was producing a wormwood-infused wine. And wormwood in German is Wermut, Wermut, and that translates in French to vermouth. So vermouth is well known in particularly France, but then increasingly in Italy. But you can have vermouth. There's a vermouth made in Scotland. There's vermouth made kind of like all around the world because it is this sweet fortified wine. Now, that picture on the left is a guy called Antonio Benedetto Carpano, who is considered like the godfather of sweet vermouth in particular. So 1786, which is the date that's on the Antica Formula Carpano sweet vermouth, which is based on his original recipe. That's when he began selling a sweet fortified wine that was also quite herbal. So what you're looking for with the vermouth is this combination of sweet and also sour, this like bittersweet note of wormwood and roots, and gentian particularly gives you quite a bitterness. If you drink it on its own, it tends to be used as a digestif, but you can also use it in cocktails, probably best known in the Negroni, which tends to be vermouth, sweet vermouth, gin, and aperitivo, so a Campari or Select, equal parts of those, or the Manhattan, which is normally 2 parts whiskey, 1 part particularly sweet vermouth. Now, dry vermouth works really well in the martini. So dry vermouth with gin, elegant, dry, absolutely fantastic combination. The sweet vermouth, that kind of like that red wine element, as well as the sweet and the bitter with the whiskey as a in the Manhattan, is an absolute classic. So this, what they'll tend to do with sweet vermouths, in order to kind of get those flavors in, is you will add a little bit of sugar syrup to the wine, and then it's fortified. Normally some kind of neutral spirit, be it grape or sugar beets or something like that, and you'll then put it into barrels or tanks, but ideally barrels, because that gives you a bit more of a rounder flavour, with the dry ingredients. So the roots, there'll be peels in there, there'll be a variety of dry ingredients that will sit in the tank or the barrel, will infuse into that fortified wine mixture, and that will give you that bittersweet notes. So you take that out, you bottle it. Now, I don't know where this vermouth is from exactly. I do know it's from Italy, but I don't know exactly what the company is that they've got those vermouth casks from. And they then finish the rye whiskey in those barrels for, like I say, about 18 months. And it's that kind of Manhattan feel of spicy. A Manhattan you can do as whiskey with vermouth, but the classic Manhattan is a rye whiskey, having that spiciness with that bittersweet wine element. Is an absolute classic. And the first time I tried this, I was like, Jesus, this is basically a premix Manhattan, but at twice the strength. And like I say, one of the sales managers has this in his freezer and just pours it out as a straight Manhattan. Doesn't even put anything else in it. Any thoughts on this? Because this might be a little bit unusual, but
nice.
Liking it? Manhattan fans in the house? No? Oh, Emma, not a fan?
No, this one's a bit too bitter for me.
Okay, yeah. And that's that vermouth element. So I understand that completely. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the same, to be fair. It's very, very bitter on the finish. I could imagine it being quite a good summer one, actually. It feels like something you could kind of sip in summer cold, but yeah, not my cup of tea, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, absolutely get that. And it might, if you've got any left, it might be worth, if you've either got some left in your little sample or if you want to pour it back in, is maybe put it in the fridge or the freezer and try it chilled later on, either tomorrow or anything like that. Because chilling it will lift that bitterness and those kind of like tannic elements. So that'll be, you make a Manhattan, you would stir it with ice and then strain it in. So a Manhattan at room temperature is a lot different to a Manhattan well chilled. So yeah, it may well be worth, just if you've got a bit left, trying it again chilled and see if that makes any difference to it. Because yeah, fully understand at room temperature that bitterness can be a little bit overpowering, especially compared to the sweeter one that we've just had before as well. So yeah, that's cool. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next one then? Is that water, Emma, or are you just necking the... Yeah. Right. Oh, I've put that. So, we're on to the rude ones now. So, the next one that we have is Stauning Bastard. So called because, and this is from the website. This is essentially the illegal love child of, and they put it as the winds of the North Sea and the heat of Mexico. Now, they do actually call it, if you look at their website, they say it's the illegal love child. And interestingly, there is a mezcal producer called Ilegal. And I've done a little bit of reading into it, and I think the very first batch that they made of this, they actually used Ilegal mezcal, which is why it's called Bastard, because it's an illegal love child. But it's now not using their particular casks. So again, the standard rye, And again, for slightly longer, so rather than 2 years, it's 3 years. So it's a slightly older stock. And we only have 6 months in casks that previously had mezcal from a distillery called Oro de Oaxaca. So Oaxaca is down just on the bottom here. It's the kind of it's not the county. I can't remember what the name is. It's not county. That nearly everybody just cannot pronounce because it's Oaxaca, and it's like, how on earth do you pronounce that? But Oaxaca is well known as a region for producing mezcal in particular. So tequila is mezcal is the category as a whole, and tequila is part of mezcal as a category, as Scotch whiskey and bourbon whiskey are to whiskey. So tequila is 3 particular regions in Mexico. It has to use Blue Weber agave. Those are the 2 things that, in order to be called tequila. Anything else that is either anywhere else in Mexico or uses any other type of agave is called mezcal, or will be known as mezcal. And mezcal generally tends to be slightly smokier than tequila. Most tequilas, the agave will be steam roasted, whereas a lot of mezcal, the agave will be roasted in clay ovens, so you get more of a smoky note coming through. So mezcal, is a massive rule of thumb, sweeping generalization, tends to have a smokier flavor profile. And this Oro de Oaxaca that is genuinely the shop in front of the distillery, which is behind it. It does not look like much, but out the back is where the stills are that they are making their mezcal. They do have a mezcal that has the so-called worm in it. It's not a worm, it's the larva of a particular grub that eats agave. And it's one of those sorts of things of, it's that tequila with a worm in it. Well, it's A, not tequila, and B, it's not a worm. And this particular, the bastard, the illegal love child, has 6 months in the Reposado mezcal. So Blanco will be straight off the still and bottled straight away. They will actually distill it down to strength. So they will keep it running until the percentage, basically, there's like extra liquid going into it that brings it down to about 46% where they bottle it. Reposado is rested, so that's aged in normally ex-bourbon casks for up to a year. And then Anejo tequila or mezcal, Anejo is aged. Aged is Anejo, and that is anywhere between 1 to 3 years. So these are casks that have had their ex-bourbon casks, Oro de Oaxaca, so Oaxaca Gold, or the Gold of Oaxaca, is put in those casks and aged to be a Reposado, so just over a year, taken out, sent over to Stauning, and they will then finish their rye whiskey in this for about 6 months. So you're looking at a slight kind of smoky note, kind of slight higher note, that kind of feel coming through. Mezcal is really interesting, becoming increasingly popular, but a lot of people are going, oh, well, tequila, it's the same thing, and it is very different to tequila. So, what do we think of this?
It's another big twist, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was looking at your face and I'm like, I don't know what you think of this one. I can see Stephen nodding.
It's good. It's so. Oh well, the last 3 just change complexity, and you go, all right. The other one was sweet, and this is just a totally different flavor. It's mad, but it's really good.
Yeah. It's really strange how the mezcal element, and that is just pulling out of the cask. It's almost like it's had mezcal added to it. It's really prominent, that kind of slightly smoky, slightly sweet note comes through. And if you've drunk a few mezcals, you absolutely pick it up. And that's what it feels like they've added to it rather than just doing a cask finish. Jamie's kind of nodding. I think he likes this. So I'm looking at people's faces, and I'm like, I think they like it, but I don't know. Anthony kind of nodded a bit, but then he's kind of like, I think, yeah.
Yeah,
Phil,
no,
I'm
I think
not
that
sure.
works really well. I think that
Yeah.
that works. It kind of brings out more, I would say, more like grassiness to the spirit. A little bit comes through for me.
Yeah.
Even a little bit of corn, possibly like a buttered
Mhm.
corn kind of vibe on it. But
Yeah.
it works really well for me. That.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have to say, out of the 4 we've tasted so far, this is the one I like best.
Okay. It'd be very, very interesting to see what you think of the next one. Stephen Sutherland, I don't know. I'm not sure. And Phil, I get the impression, is really on the fence on this one. He keeps going back to it. That's the thing. He's like, don't know, not sure.
This, I don't know if there's any smoke in it or not, Ben, but I think it's a great body, plenty of flavour. It's sweet and heavy. I do like it. I maybe one of the few that preferred the El Clasico just beforehand, because that was lots of orange peel, and that's maybe obvious notes, but nearly like a Negroni or like an old fashioned. But no, that's good.
Yeah. Mr. Sutherland, I'd be intrigued because you've got a poker face going on there.
I would say on the fence. So I think probably also. So the El Clasico actually grew on me. The immediate sort of hit of vermouth and sort of I was quite off-putting, but actually you gave it a bit of time, and I think that grew on me. This is okay. I'm not sort of. I've had a couple of sort of mezcal or tequila finishes, and they've never wowed me.
Yeah. It's a really unusual flavour profile, and I have a feeling that over the next few years you'll see quite a few more. Now that Scotch whisky regulations have relaxed, that there will be, I'm fairly certain, a few tequila finishes, maturations, that sort of thing. But it's two quite strong flavours that are, if you can get it right, brilliant. But if it doesn't work, it will not work. It's going to be very, very weird. So it's. I'm going to be really interested to see what you think of the next one as well, because the next one basically does the same, but then puts a twist on a twist. So let's move on. Yeah, go on.
Is going back to the standard floor.
Yeah.
The nose on that is just brilliant. It's interesting just to go back. But yeah.
Oh, Dave, you're a good lad, aren't you? I mean, to be honest, this is one of the first times I've actually remembered to say at the start, or if you can, hang on to it. Because normally I get halfway through and then go, oh, crap, if you could, and everybody's finished it. So,
well, no, it's standard operating procedure. Work 6 glasses and keep going back across the board.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It is hard work, I must admit, but yeah, that first one. All right, I've got it in the nominal glass, so it's got a big nose profile to build on it. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I really feel like we're kind of speeding through this, but I'm trying to kind of draw everything out. But it's easier said than done. So if we go on to the next one, then. So this is, and I cannot not say this without a Geordie accent, because it has to be Dirty Bastard. This again came out last year. The Jura Dreams is their latest one, but Dirty Bastard came out, or depending on where you live in the country, obviously, it could be Dirty Bastard. Dirty Bastard came out, was about July, August of last year. So this starts off exactly the same as the previous one. We've got the 3 years Virgin American oak, 6 months in the mezcal casks. But there is a brewery in Copenhagen called Tøl, which is Danish for 2 beers. And these guys do a stout that they call a Mexican hot chocolate stout. Now, the the Mexican hot chocolate doesn't really have anything to do with Mexico. It's just a hot chocolate that is spicy. So a Mexican hot chocolate worldwide is a hot chocolate that you put chili in as well to make it spicy. And these guys make a Mexican hot chocolate imperial stout. So this is an imperial milk stout that is aged for 12 months in ex-bourbon barrels, but they add into the barrel to then infuse into the beer and add flavors. Walnuts, almonds, hazelnuts, pecans, cinnamon, cacao nibs, chili flakes, and whole chilies, and then lactose as well. So it's trying to get this kind of chocolatey, spicy, dark, stout feel going through. To all bottle it, and then the barrels go to Stauning to then put the bastard to then turn the bastard into Dirty Bastard. Now they could quite easily just put their bog standard rye in, and I think they have done that as a one-off. But they decided that they were actually going to take the mezcal finish and then finish it again for a second time. So this is a limited batch of just under 3,000 bottles. And that is it. It's a one-off at the moment. They haven't done it again, but there's nothing to stop them doing it one more time. And this absolutely fascinated me. I was really looking forward to it because I like the bastard. But this, I'm really interested to know what people think, particularly the ones that weren't that keen on the first one, on the mezcal, to see whether that stout element makes a difference. I'm seeing some nods already.
I prepared that to the plain destination bastard.
Plain bastard.
Plain bastard or dirty bastard. Yes, sorry. Confuse the bastard.
I can't hear what you're saying. It went really. It went really
Yeah,
bubbly.
sorry. I said, yeah, I prefer this one to the plain bastard.
I prefer that one. Yeah.
The change on the nose is it's quite something on that one.
Yeah, it's weird how it's just kind of like warmer and darker and deep and chocolatey, and it's bizarre. It's so incredible how that extra element has just taken it in a completely different direction. I can see Phil nodding, nearly broke his neck the way he was nodding on this.
That's brilliant. Really is.
Oh yes.
I mean, it's obvious. You've already said it, but loads dark chocolate, thick and chewy. That's fantastic.
Yeah. I think Jamie's a fan. I've not heard anything from Andrew and his other half over there, but they are half a mile away by the looks of it. So.
Oh, it's lovely.
Do you want any sign language? Oh no, how's your sound?
We like this one.
Yeah, this is nice.
Yeah.
No, I'm sticking with number 4.
The one before this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely sticking with the one before.
Okay.
That one doesn't do anything for me at all.
Oh, really?
I can't taste the chocolate in it, but then that might be my throat as much as anything else. Who knows?
Oh, okay. You're going to save a bit for later on. You feel the cold?
No, just the long COVID. I've still got no taste.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
No, it's a big improvement on the last one.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, there's just it's like this extra element over the top that just that kind of spice of the mezcal, and then that kind of weird stouty, chocolatey, all sorts of stuff.
It's like chili chocolate.
Ben, do you see any similarity? Sorry, go on, James.
No, it's all right, mate. Go on.
Just want to ask Ben if you see any similarities with the Kiro, the Finnish rye whiskey, and any of
the Kiro, the Kiro finish I really like. The if you would say the Kiro standard rye and the ordinary Stauning rye, the Kiro is a little bit more sourdough and less fruity than the Stauning. But the wood smoke rye that they do, I think is absolutely stunning, and is different. It's a different type of smokiness to the next one that we go to, which is the Chaos, because that's got 3 different elements going in. So I really like Stauning. I really like Kiro, and they're different enough that they're 2 rye whiskies that are both absolutely fantastic. And then their separate elements in terms of the Woodsmoke Hero and the rest of the Stauning range, they're both brilliant. So I struggle to kind of say one is better than the other, because I think they've both got individual characteristics that are both excellent. So it's kind of for personally, it's like a no lose. I think they're both excellent, and they've both got their characteristics of their own that stand out rather than being very similar. Right, so oh, I like that a lot. So, excuse me. Let's go on to. Oh, this is such a ridiculously quick tasting. It's so unlike me. So the last one is Chaos, and bit of an odd spelling, but I shall go on to that in a second. So this is they actually do a Stauning smoke, but the smoke is just malted barley. So it is a single malt peated version, whereas Chaos is, they actually call it a triple malt whiskey. And the reason for that is it's malted unpeated barley, malted smoked or peated barley, and floor malted rye. So this is 3 types of malting that's going on. Triple malt's sort of a bit of a misnomer, because technically it's a single malt, because it's still from the same, and it's not, you've got rye in there as well. But the peat that they use is actually pulled from an ancient peat bog that's by the Closterland Museum, which is about 90 kilometres away from the distillery. And they pull peat out of this peat bog. So we are talking nearly millions of years old that this peat is. Really intense flavours that are coming through. There is also, Stauning itself overlooks a fjord, and there is heather growing on that fjord. So they use heather from the fjord along with the bog peat as their to impart their smokiness when they're drying their barley. So they don't smoke the rye, they just smoke the barley. So we have smoked barley, unsmoked barley, and unsmoked rye, but are all floor malted in that tranche that you saw with the machine going round. Now, the name Chaos is inspired by a very famous part of Danish history, and actually is linked to the name. So this is Thorvald Stauning, who was the first Social Democratic Prime Minister of Denmark in 1931. And for his re-election campaign, so he ended up being the second longest Prime Minister of Denmark. And he's known as sort of the founder of the modern welfare state. So for re-election in 1935, this is in Denmark. This is a very famous poster, which is often copied. And the slogan was Stauning eller Chaos, or Stauning or Chaos. You vote for Stauning or you vote for Chaos. And it won him re-election. Now, the village is not named after Thorvald Stauning, but there is a mountain range in Greenland, which is called the Stauning Alps, which is actually named after him. So, kind of the chaos element is the chaos of these 3 types of whiskies that are going in, but then also this well-known historical element for Danish history in particular. Now, with this particular bottling, we've got around 4 to 5 years old maturation, and it's again virgin American oak barrels, heavily charred, but they also use first fill casks that are sourced from Maker's Mark. So it's virgin oak as well as ex-bourbon casks, and they explicitly say it's first fill Maker's Mark casks that they're using for this. So put this on last because this is where that smoky element comes through. It's not as smoky as the smoke, but that is their peated barley and nothing else. Whereas I think this has got arguably more to it. I tried this in a Manhattan, and I thought this was absolutely amazing. That kind of smokiness was not medicinal, kind of like almost a little bit gentle, and then the vermouth element in there as well. The thing I've not tried is actually putting this with some El Clasico and see what happens with that. But what do we think of this one? Because this is where we go again in a different tangent. Oh, Anthony's nodding. He's on mute, but I think he likes this one. Stephen, like it? Yeah, thumbs up. I really like that rye element, that kind of sourdough and smoke and sweet. There's loads going on with this.
Yeah, that's
this for me is something to give to somebody that isn't really into peated whiskey or wants to know what it's like, wants to take that first step in. This is that introductory. This is what smoky whiskey could do. You know, this is where it can go. It's got the sweetness. It's got the smokiness.
I think it's a bit further on than that. I mean,
do you think?
Yeah, it's not. It's not a novice entry for smoke. I think it's a couple of notches up from that. It's not smacking your face and kicking you around, but it's nice, flavoursome, it's good nose. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think I think the sweetness helps. I'm going to try it actually. Let's see what it's like with a bit of Classico. Let's see if we can make a smoky Manhattan. That's like the strongest Manhattan you've ever had. I say. Oh, that might work. That might have to go in the freezer and save it for later on. Yeah, anybody not a fan of this? Anybody not into the smoky side? I mean, it seems like most people. Andrew? Yes, good. 2 thumbs up. Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Seems to have gone down particularly well. This is weird. This has been like the quickest tasting I've ever done, but it seems to have gone down really well. Excuse me. So, if you were wanting to buy a bottle, which I'm hoping you do, because I have kids to feed, this is how the pricing works out. So the pricing is pretty consistent across the board. And as doing the tasting, as always, there is the 10% discount off. So the Floor Malted Rye and the Duro Dreams go down to $58.49. I've just realised I've done the wrong one. 2 seconds. I'm just going to quickly edit my thing because I've just realised I've done the wrong thing. Hang on. Oh no. Wait a minute. Always happens when I cut and paste. There's always one price that's wrong, isn't there? Every single time. That one. Right. Just let me check the price. It always happens. Stauning. Yeah. Here's Duragin. Right, so 58.49 and there we go. Nobody is any the wiser. Nobody realised. There we go. Share screen. That one. That one. That one. It's still wrong. Damn it. Right.
You need help.
One of these days I'll get it right. So
He's beyond help.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. Oh, we know that. Right, that one. There we go. Right. So 58.49 for the floor mortar dry and the Duro Dreams, which strangely isn't the same price as all the others, would be $69.99. And that goes down to $62.99. So if you would want any of those bottles, you can use the code Stauning if you go on the website, and that will give you your 10% off. You will also get 10% off sweet wine cask as well, which is the $69.99. Or just give me a shout and ring me up and we can sort something out. I've had a bit of an issue with the distributor in terms of getting my latest supply in. So I don't have any Dirty Bastard in stock at the moment. What I have done, because I've got it coming in next week because it was supposed to be in, is if you buy it on the website, it will go through. And then I just need to wait for it to turn up for me to then send it to you. So it might be a couple of days later, but it will get to you. It's just I don't have it on the shelf at the moment because they've been a bit annoying and a bit useless. So yeah, if you order what you want to do, the 10% off will actually stay till the end of the month. So if you decide, or for people that are watching it online at a later date, it is available on the 10% offer until the end of the month. And you'll get your discount. So I haven't got any. No, I'm not going to do a picture. Coming attractions, because the next tasting that I've got is now sold out, which is the Lockley one. But I am just working on the next two. The next tasting after Lockley is potentially going to be White Peak Distillery from Derbyshire. They have just released this weekend, and I think it's sold out, 2 bottles that were matured in different parts of the warehouse that they've called upwards and downwards. And I've managed to get a bottle of each, but I also have their port finish and full port maturation, and then the Alter Ego and the Kuduro, which is different cuts of their distillation process. So essentially it'll be a comparison tasting. It's a bit of a technical one, but it'll be looking at almost 3 different types of whiskey that have been done in 2 slightly different ways. So it'll be either maturation, or where it's been in the warehouse, or whether it was a finish or a full maturation, or the actual distillation points. And then potentially in late June will be the New York Distilling Company, which will be their rye whiskies. So it'll be another rye whiskey tasting, but American rye whiskey, mainly because they've got a limited edition cask strength, which is absolutely amazing. And it's an excuse to put 2 of those on, as well as the rest of their range as well. But I've not got dates sorted yet, but keep an eye out for those. And if you are anywhere near the area, which 2 of you are, I've got a Yorkshire Spirits tasting event, which is in person at the Shy Hole down the road, which will also include a quiz and a raffle as a fundraiser for the Shy Hole, as well as trying some a gin, 2 gins, vodka, whiskey, rum, and a cream liqueur from made in the region. And there's quiz and music round and all sorts of fun stuff as well. So if you can make it in person, that's on the 12th of April, and that'll be really good fun as well. So that's what is coming up soon. So keep an eye out on the website and the mailing list once I've got the date sorted for the next 2 as well.